What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, April 25th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. And thanks to everybody who sent in emails of concern. I'm doing a little bit better today. I'm able to get around a little more easily. I am healing. This is not going to be a chronic issue. But it's obviously a problem when both Claire and I are having to walk around with a walking stick. But, I went down to a slightly smaller, lighter weight one instead of that big 4-footed monster. So, bit by bit, I'm getting better. All right, so let's get into the news here. It is now official. Joe Biden has stepped into the 2020 presidential race. No reaction yet from the Hillary campaign. Not much of a reaction from anybody except for Trump, because apparently Biden, when he officially announced his campaign, which isn't a surprise to anybody, he's been in the polls, he's leading the polls. Right now, the pundits are saying he's it. He's going to be the candidate. But apparently, Biden's theme is a battle for the soul of this nation. Trump basically came on back and said, "Welcome to the race, Sleepy Joe," which I think was supposed to be a slight at Joe's perceived lack of intelligence. Now, one thing that Biden did is he referred to that debunked claim that Trump referred to neo-Nazis in Charlottesville, Virginia, back in 2017 as very fine people. And no, he didn't. But he made it part of his little 3.5-minute YouTube video. And Biden cites the riots as his primary motivation for running against Trump, presenting a version of events that even one of the CNN contributors declared to be fraudulent. So he's off to a rocky start, but again, you can't argue with the poll numbers. And so a lot of people, as is always the case when somebody steps up and says, "I'm going to run for the White House," they're digging into his past. They're already digging out all those videos of him just being creepy around young children. Another one, this came up from fee.org, reminding everybody that Joe Biden was the architect of the disastrous war on drugs. So anyway, it is getting crowded out there in Democrat land. We've got Joe Biden now, we've got Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, former San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro, Washington Governor Jay Inslee, and former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper. What a terrible name to have to grow up with here. But basically, they're saying that Biden's role as the godfather of the war on drugs should disqualify him from ever occupying the Oval Office. Well, obviously the war on drugs has been a bad thing for a lot of people, but it was the law of the land. But a lot of people really look at how botched up it is, and they threaten Biden for that. So we're reaching the point, though, in this campaign where we're going to start seeing the dropouts. The shakeouts are going to begin. And apparently, Pete Buttigieg's fast-rising campaign is starting to cut into Beto O'Rourke's viral mojo. This is a report coming out of the Hill. And things apparently are very much worse for Beto than simply being another candidate jumping into the race that's already overcrowded. Now, O'Rourke, of course, is the former Texas congressman who became a media phenomenon when he nearly toppled Senator Ted Cruz last year. but he's been eclipsed in recent weeks by Buttigieg, the upstart South Bend, Indiana mayor, who's won headline after headline and changed national perceptions about his candidate. So Buttigieg appears to be more media savvy than Beto O'Rourke, and at this point it looks like the Democratic Party primary isn't big enough to hold them both. So one of them will have to drop out. Actually, I'm expecting that we're going to start seeing a lot of dropouts. For one thing, and I don't know if it's because they don't want to talk about the wars, we're still in April of 2019. The election isn't until November of 2020. And yet I was watching on Fox News, and it's already like we're in the thick of the campaign. The news stories are primarily about, well, this person said this, and Biden is in, and we're battling for the soul of the nation, and this is how Trump responded. Boy, oh boy. I think probably most Americans are going to be totally burned out by the time the election actually shows up. You're not going to want to bother to vote. You're just going to say, oh, I can't deal with it anymore. Turn off the TV. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And the Democrats are still out there talking impeachment. They're divided on it. A lot of the Democrats are saying it would be a bad move and it could backfire. Then you have the more hysterical never-Trumpers like Hillary Clinton, who are out there saying, absolutely, let's go for impeachment. And the question is, it's tenuous at best. And looking at this article that came out of uns.com, the bottom line is that Mueller's document bans were all met. The investigation was unimpeded. Trump did not collude with Russia, neither did anybody in his campaign. Trump is innocent. And Mueller did not conclude that Trump obstructed justice. Basically, you have these Democrats are grabbing the Mueller report and they're going back over it and saying, oh no, this would count as obstruction. This would count as obstruction. They are just so desperate. They are just so desperate. And I do think it's having an impact on public perception. So anyway, Attorney General Bill Barr has pointed out Trump has a right to be angry. He was pilloried in the corporate media for 2.5 years for a crime which he did not commit and which, in point of fact, never happened. There'd been no collusion. There was no crime at all here. Now, Judge Napolitano, he used to be very supportive of Donald Trump, and then following the Kavanaugh nomination, Napolitano seemed to cool on him and was a very pessimistic commentator on the Mueller report. Well, now that the report is out and Trump is exonerated, Napolitano is out there saying the legal jeopardy for President Trump has passed. And if Democrats proceed with an attempt to impeach, they're going to sign their own political death warrant. I'm in agreement with him on that one. It's going to blow up in their faces. They're going to hoist with their own petard. William Barr is saying there are 10 instances of alleged obstruction of justice. But obviously they decided there wasn't enough to prove the case. Now, what the Democrats are really going to do, I don't think they're going to actually go for the impeachment. But they're going to get a whole bunch of lawyers out there, former prosecutors, who are going to say, by golly, if we could just get this into the House, or yeah, he obstructed justice. And they're going to try and ride that into 2020. Democrats are still screaming. They're sending all these subpoenas for all these documents from Donald Trump. And the rules are very, very clear. Okay, Congress just can't subpoena documents just to go on a fishing expedition. There has to be a legitimate legislative purpose behind the subpoena. And I'm sure the Democrats are trying to craft one up right about now. By the way, did you know that the Capitol building used to have a jail? And unfortunately, they don't use it anymore. So it raises the question of exactly what is Congress going to do if Trump ignores the subpoenas. We've had a lot of ignored subpoenas over the last couple of years, if you remember. So the Democrats are out there saying we're fighting. They want Trump, and Trump is saying we're going to fight all the subpoenas. There's another little tiff that came on out where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez made a bit of a slip on the Veterans Administration, which has come under serious criticism in recent years for not doing a very good job for our wounded, crippled veterans. And a lot of them literally die waiting for that first appointment. But Alexandria came on out and said they're doing a great job. They provide the best health care for our veterans. And people were laughing at her. But apparently Donald Trump agrees with her, which strikes me as an unenlightened opinion. They tweeted out his support for her. Meanwhile, Alexandria herself is out there saying the GOP wants to rip the battery out of the VA, say the whole car doesn't work, and sell it for parts. Well, the fact is, it really doesn't work, and it is an embarrassment here. And apparently, Bernie Sanders, he may have a short-lived candidacy. He's refusing to disavow his comments about a Venezuela-style nationalization of major American corporations. And he got into a little bit of mess saying that he feels the Boston Marathon bomber ought to have the right to vote in prison. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was right along with him. Alexandria has backed off, but Bernie refuses to back down. And so he was on, or rather, over on The View, and their hosts were basically arguing about it. And apparently Meghan McCain got angry at Whoopi Goldberg. Said, maybe you think terrorism is funny, I do not. Okay, over at Zero Hedge, they have an excellent little article. It's called Operation Crossfire Boomerang Begins. And that's sort of a play on the words that, there we are. That's a play on the words because the spying on Trump was called Crossfire Hurricane. So now it's Crossfire Boomerang. So everybody's saying, you know, did Trump try and stop the Mueller probe? Did he or didn't he? It's the wrong question to ask. Why was it even started? There was no there. That dossier was a total joke. And there's another question. When did Mueller know they were not going to find any collusion? Now, I heard last August. If he'd gone public with no collusion last August, it would have had an impact on the midterm elections. The Democrats were just doing that collusion and obstruction stuff as part of their whole campaign effort. So let's see what's going to happen with their article over at Investment Watch blog. Greg Jarrett, Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Andrew McCabe should be prosecuted. I absolutely agree. Apparently, Giuliani sent a warning to Hillary Clinton, better get a lawyer. Well, I have a warning for Rudy Giuliani. Stay out of small aircraft and suburban Washington, D.C. Parks. Okay. One of the things that has come out in the Mueller report is a confirmation that Russia succeeded in taping Bill Clinton having phone sex with Monica Lewinsky. That was always something that was of concern when that was all going down, that if a foreign country could get that recording, they would have inappropriate leverage. So apparently Clinton allegedly was recorded by Russia in the 1990s, allowing Russia to learn of the affair even before American officials. Now, a reference to the Clinton intercept was redacted from the Mueller report to protect personal privacy, but sources told the Washington Examiner the context makes it clear what was blacked out. So this could be extremely embarrassing. I mean, the Democrats are still demanding a totally unredacted copy of the report. That would not be very good for Bill Clinton. Of course, at his age, he probably doesn't care anymore. So apparently the Jared Kushner received an email in 2016 from Center for the National Interest President Dimitri Simes, basically with talking points to counter Hillary Clinton's Russia attacks. And the email referenced a well-documented story of highly questionable connections between Bill Clinton and Russia. Now, whether that's the phone sex with Monica Lewinsky or the Uranium One, which I would see is a far worse problem. Deutsche Bank has begun complying with New York prosecutors' requests for documents related to the Trump Organization properties, even as the president digs in his heels against congressional subpoenas. Well, these are two parallel processes going on here. So apparently, Deutsche Bank became a primary lender for Trump's company when other sources of credit were drying up. And it's in the process of handing over documents to New York Attorney General Letitia James. And apparently, a lot of this is tangled up with former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen testifying that Trump inflated his net worth while trying to purchase the Buffalo Bills NFL franchise back in 2014. So we've got two House committees, the Intelligence Panel and the House Financial Services Committees, also sent the bank inquiries for financial information on Trump. What I don't understand is why they hate this guy so much. Because so far, he's giving them everything they want. The wars, the only thing he's stood firm on so far, he doesn't support Planned Parenthood. He's talking a lot about ending the out-of-control immigration. But Trump isn't the big threat to the deep state we all expected him to be. And we're hearing about all these criminal referrals being written out for, like, James Comey. Okay, it's a criminal referral. Where did it go? All right, let's turn to the war zones. Let's see, apparently former Attorney General Sessions is out there saying, I have great confidence in the system. I think he's dropping a hint that it's time to get past all this Russophobia, Russian collusion nonsense, and not surprisingly, I agree. There are so many other things going wrong right now. Okay, there's the music. We got to do a commercial break, and we will be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to turn to the war zones because there are so many of them. And we're not seeing a lot of coverage in the corporate media for all the saber rattling that's currently going on. And maybe that's why the corporate media is cranking up the 2020 campaign so early. That's the distraction. We get to watch the politicians fight back and forth, and all of a sudden we'll be engulfed in a major global war before we realize it, before we have a chance to stand up and say, this is idiotic. So over in Afghanistan, the U.S. forces and the Afghan forces that are trained by Americans are actually killing more civilians than the Taliban does. And it does seem like of late, the U.S. has basically dropped any concern for not having civilian casualties, for not, for basically keeping the war confined to active combatants. We've been hearing about these civilians being killed in all of these countries the U.S. is in. And it's always called collateral damage. And maybe now's a good time to just, drop all the charges against Julian Assange and his leaker, because what they showed was exactly that: the U.S. military killing civilians. They showed a Reuters news crew being gunned down by a U.S. helicopter. It was shocking back then. Americans thought we had a moral army. Today, maybe not. All right, so anyway, the U.S. and the Afghan forces killed more civilians than did the Taliban in the first quarter of 2019, according to the United Nations. And apparently this is being put off to increased bombing campaigns by the U.S. and increasingly reckless search operations by pro-government forces. Okay. Well, the United Nations finally got access to the Rukban refugee camp in Syria, and they immediately called for a third humanitarian aid delivery after assessing the situation there. And apparently, UN Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Ursula Mueller, addressed the UN Security Council yesterday and said that our teams accessed the shelters for the first time. The deployment of a third humanitarian convoy to Rukban remains urgent to avoid the deaths of more children. And Mueller went on to say that Syrian authorities have so far refused to grant the United Nations permission to arrange another humanitarian aid delivery to the camp. Well, I imagine the camp by now is an embarrassment. Over in Iraq, there's a story that is basically coming on out here, and it involves Chief Special Warfare Operator Edward Eddie Gallagher, who has now been accused of a whole raft of war crimes in Iraq, including killing an unarmed Daesh fighter with a knife, firing indiscriminately on civilians, as well as specifically targeting individual civilians and shooting them with a sniper rifle. Now, when this was all going down, the SEALs were trying to cover this up. They were saying, stop talking about it, stop talking about it. And they were all part of Team 7's Alpha Platoon, and they're now saying they were warned by top brass against reporting their commanding officer for war crimes. So that, I think, is a good look into the military. Of course, after all the war that they've been in, you could go into a combat situation, and survive it mentally for a short time. But look how long this country has been at war. Look at how long some of these poor recruits have had to, deal with all this stress and all this horror. And they may have very expensive equipment. They're not well trained. We got the lesson on that one from the crews of those two Arleigh Burkes that rammed into commercial ships out in the Western Pacific. And the Navy concluded the bridge crews were simply inadequately trained to be doing what they were doing. All right, we've got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And let me just scroll this over here a little bit. Too many windows open on this desk, I think. Too many knobs, too many buttons, too many loose wires. Okay, getting on back to the news. I was just looking at this whizzing by in the members' post here. Apparently out in Southern California, they're going to rename Rodeo Drive, which is this very high-end Beverly Hills road. It's now going to be Obama Boulevard. And apparently they're going to have a big soiree about it after the first of the month. Okay, getting on back to more serious things here. Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif says that Iran is confident in its ability to evade U.S. sanctions, noting that the country has a PhD in that area. So Zarif was being interviewed by Reuters, and he went on to say that he believes Donald Trump doesn't want to go to war with Iran, but he could be lured into one. Such an event, Zarif said Iran would be ready to defend himself or defend itself. Well, we certainly know that Trump is surrounded by people who think war on Iran is a good thing. Got Benjamin Netanyahu calling him up every day. So Zarif was warning that certain individuals could try to create an accident, by which he means a false flag, that would ultimately lead to a broader crisis. Now, this gets us back to the statement that was made yesterday by Iran, that if the U.S. does refuse to reissue waivers for oil sales, that Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, there's a light bit of chuckling with everybody saying, well, obviously Iran's Navy is no match for the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy's got aircraft carriers in there. But if you look very carefully on Google Earth at the Strait of Hormuz, at how narrow that channel is, most of the water that's flowing out of there is shallow. So ships with a deep draft have to follow a very narrow path. Now, all Iran would have to do is tow some old, rusted up, corroded oil tankers out to the middle of that channel and sink them and just block it. Then they could skedaddle and the Navy could fume and all they want. And by the way, that is a very common thing that gets done in wartime, is blockading harbors with ships. They did it to Shanghai, China in World War II. They were trying to do it down here at Pearl Harbor by sinking the USS Nevada in the channel. All right, we have a caller, Michael in Canada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Sorry to hear you fell down the stairs there.
Yeah, well, it was a dumb thing for me to do, and I just missed a step. And but I'm better today than I was yesterday.
Good. Anyway, about this Alexandria Cortez there, lady.
Yes.
Did you see on YouTube they got a little 8-year-old girl looks just like her?
Yes, I did see that.
That's hilarious, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. But they make fun of her, and rightfully so, mind you. But when they say, "Oh," she says, "Oh, we got to have this and that," and you say, "How are you going to pay for it?" And she says, "Oh, well, you just pay for it." Everybody thinks that's pretty dumb. But when somebody says, "Hey, let's have a war. It's only going to cost $3 trillion," and somebody says, "Well, how are we going to pay for it?" They just say, "Oh, we'll just pay for it."
Well, in the case of war, I mean, that's why bankers love the war because, you know, the governments who are belligerents have to come and borrow lots of money, which is the banks create out of thin air. And that places those countries in debt to the banks and under their control. And then after the war is over, those countries have to come back and borrow even more to rebuild. It's this huge, gigantic scam that the private central bankers have been playing for 300 years. Gin up a war to keep nations plunged into debt.
No problem paying for it though. I can never understand why the United States can't have universal health care like we do here in Canada. I mean, if you want to know how to do it, just look how we do it. We just pay for it, you know.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact in your country, beer and spirits and wine are way cheaper than Canada. I bet you if you put another 5% tax on all that, that'd pay for your health care. And you'd be just like Canada. If something happens in Canada, you just go to the doctor, go to the hospital. You know, doesn't matter. You get cancer, you don't have to sell your house. You know.
Well, that would be really, really nice. I mean, one of the reasons Claire is having such a difficult time with her back is it literally took us 3 months to get her an appointment at Straub. You know, for what was potentially an injury that could have led to paralysis, and to a small degree may have.
There's some waiting times here in Canada too for minor stuff. But if you got something serious, you get in. So it's a pretty good system, I think. Like I say, if you get cancer, you don't have to sell your house and stuff to be able to get treatment.
You know, it's a mess. And again, one of the things Donald Trump campaigned on back in 2016 was trying to find out why the cost of medical care, prescription drugs, services, treatments are so much higher in this country than in the other countries where the identical same treatments, prescription drugs, and care are available. And he never did that.
Donald Trump don't know that, Mike. You and I both know it. Maybe Donald Trump can't figure that out, but you and I can.
Yep. Absolutely, we can.
Okay,
anyway,
then, Mike, I'll let you go. I'm not going to take up any more of your time.
Not a problem here, Michael. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, do you think that it's possible the U.S. is trying to sucker Iran into blocking the Straits of Hormuz so they got an excuse to attack the country?
Could be. It definitely could be.
They can't get them to do anything else. They've been sticking pokes in them, trying to get them to do something. So they got an excuse, and now they threaten to do this. So I can see them calling her bluff, and then making a big deal out of sinking a ship in there, and then having raids from all these carriers. The whole thing doesn't smell good. But anyway, I got a comment about the VA hospital you mentioned this morning.
Okay.
I just got out. I've been into it. It depends on the VA hospital. The VA hospitals out in Arizona, they were very lacking in physicians. And I had a friend that was a Vietnam veteran. That was the only medical he had. And he died of bladder cancer because he couldn't get an appointment. They kept putting him off. And that's in the old days. I hope they corrected that. In Long Beach, California, it's an excellent hospital. As far as I'm concerned, I've had excellent treatment, friendly staff. They call me for a follow-up. I got to go back in. Doctors and the nurses are great. So it does depend on the location, what they've done.
Yeah.
You can't blame, put them all in the same category. I know General Shinseki got relieved because of that.
Yes.
But they were lying to him, about what was going on with the VA system. And then the new guy that took over was the third one now, Wilkie, but McDonald, I think, took over, and he was going to hire 3,500 doctors and nurses and all this sort of thing to correct these problems. I hope they have. I don't know. I just know about this one hospital. I'm very satisfied with it, but I don't even have to go there. I'm retired military, so I got TRICARE. I can go anywhere. I go to UCLA Medical Center for a specialty condition I have, but I go to Long Beach for just the ordinary things,
Okay.
because I like it better, Anyway, that's about all I had, Mike. Just want to comment and ask you about Straits of Hormuz, and I'll listen to the rest of the show.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Terry. We're going to let you go. And if Iran blockades the Strait of Hormuz, even if they do it in a way that avoids direct combat with the U.S. Navy, it could be. That could be the excuse right there. And again, we had that story earlier in the week where supposedly this source inside the White House is saying that Trump wants to invade Iran in the fall. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here. Tony in, not even sure where this is, PR. Oh, Puerto Rico. Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I have a quick comment. I want to change the subject a little bit. Joe Biden, you think he has a realistic chance of beating Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think he does, because Trump has basically just turned his back on the base that put him in that Oval Office back in 2016. I mean...
Okay. Yeah, and my other question, Biden's better surround himself with the best bodyguards, because he could find himself in Fort Marcy Park. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. And again, no comment yet from the Hillary camp. But I think she's going to step in. And her primary competitor is going to be Joe Biden. I'm hearing some noise on the line. Do we have another caller I haven't spoken to yet? Okay. All right, just gremlins here. Getting on back to the Middle East and to Iran, President Hassan Rouhani is saying that Iran is not going to bother talking with the U.S. as long as the U.S. keeps lying. And he claims that Trump's claims of seeking negotiations with Iran are mere lies, and that the United States, in fact, is trying to and intending to force the Iranian nation to its knees. And Rouhani is very much correct on that, because that has become the foreign policy of the United States, to just go on out and put pressure on countries, break their economy, drive them into the ground, and then say, you will do what we tell you to do. So it's nice that so many foreign leaders are now openly out there and saying, yeah, the U.S. government lies about these things here. Another little article. This one came out of Low Blog. The path to war with Iran is paved with sanctions. It certainly does seem to be. I mean, basically, the Trump administration is laying siege to Iran. And taking a page from the Iraq War playbook, senior officials are painting a picture of a rogue, outlaw, terrorist regime bent on acquiring nuclear weapons and whose malign activities are the cause of all the chaos in the Middle East. They're building the case for war. Now, of course, it isn't Iran that is causing chaos all across the Middle East. It's the United States, aided by their ally, Israel. And over at the White House, they're calling it the maximum pressure campaign. And the State Department basically has announced the United States would force China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Turkey to cease all imports of Iranian oil or face severe U.S. sanctions. They want to zero out all of Iran's oil exports, which, by the way, in addition to the risk of leading to a potential war, is going to create shortages. gas prices are going to go up. That's a small price to pay to get those gosh darned Iranians. Okay, we've got another caller on the line. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Hey, I hope both of you doing okay, doing well. You know, you and Clara. Okay. I just want to say there's a couple of things I want to mention. One is Biden. I don't think he's got a chance. I think they already got him. They got him all for this perversion thing, you know, what he's done, including the children. But more on top of that, this Ukraine thing is catching up with him now. We're going to find out he was at the very core of the overthrow of the Ukrainian government and making money off of it. At least his son was making money off of it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. His son made out like a bandit.
This is going to take him down, I think. And I just want to comment also about the thing about the insurance, medical insurance and all that. I was listening to driving along, I listened to some guy on Sirius XM, David Webb. I don't know if you know who he is. He's a so-called conservative talk show host.
Yep.
And I just caught it at the, I just turned it on. I caught it. He was arguing with somebody about health insurance, and the guy was saying how good Canadian health insurance was comparatively, and Webb was just denying it outright. He wouldn't even let the guy. He barely let the guy speak because he knows people who are, from Canada. They can't get they can't get medical treatment when they need it, and they really don't have health care there. They just it's a name, kind of a name only. And yeah, this guy from I heard from Canada coming on saying that's absolutely not true. For minor stuff, they may have a long wait. They may have to wait, but not for major stuff. And like the guy said, he doesn't have to sell his house if something happens. So, the thing is that the problem with somebody like Ocasio is she don't come up with the real solution. And that says if we're going to want to have this kind of health insurance, and I think we should, not necessarily run by the government, but at least by, it should be made available to every American citizen, man, woman, and child, and that's by drastically cutting the so-called defense budget. I call it the police the world budget.
Yeah, I do too. Okay, Mark, stay on the line. We got to take a commercial break. I'll come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're still talking with Mark in North Carolina, and we're talking about, the field of candidates. We're off to an insanely early campaign, and of course, I don't know when the early state primaries begin, but I don't think it's this year. And we've got a record number of potential candidates out there, and I can't see one of them I actually would want to vote for. I've got those I'm more intense about voting against, but I'm not seeing anybody I want to vote for. Mark, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah, well, I see one candidate I'd vote for in a second, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. I know that
you're right. She slipped my mind. I should have said, yeah, Tulsi's the one I would vote for.
And I would think about Bernie if Bernie starts coming out against the military-industrial complex more, and if he starts talking about freeing Julian Assange, and instead he's taken no position. And that disgusts me when somebody does that. The same thing is, with Trump, he pretended he didn't know, pretends he doesn't even know who Assange is, because that goes to the core of our freedom. Mike, I just wanted to say, about the health insurance again. I wouldn't want to see the government take completely over, because, you see, they would start then mandatoring things like vaccines and other stuff like that. They're trying to do that anyway.
Yes.
And I would like to see something put together, not only by MDs, but also working together with holistic doctors and with chiropractors and people like that, because then we would get something, nutritionists. Then we get something that I think might work, and it should also be funded.
It probably would work, but again, the medical industrial complex doesn't want healthcare that works, because their profits go up the more chronically ill you are. And that's why we're seeing, literally a war has been declared on homeopathy, natural herbal cures. I mean, they're coming after kratom next. They wanted to ban valerian not too long ago. They want a complete monopoly lock on treating you and treating you and treating you and billing you and billing you and billing you. And that's why our health care is terrible. The more we spend on health care in this country, the sicker we are all getting.
Yeah, and just another thing, too. I was listening to, on Saturday, I was listening to a little bit of the Breitbart show, also on Sirius XM, and they had one of their people on there with a guest talking, actually urging that people, because of the measles so-called scare, that there should be mandatory vaccinations for everybody. This is, like I said, this is disgrace. Oh, first of all, measles is not that I had it when I was a little kid. I'm sure you probably had it too.
Yes.
I had mumps, chickenpox, and when I was in the Army, I actually had German measles or rubella. None of these things are that serious. I had to go to the base hospital when I was in the Army only because, they didn't want everybody affected in the barracks. You know what I mean? They had to get on with the war machine. But I wasn't really that sick or anything like that. So this is the thing, and they want to push this on us, and that's why I wouldn't trust the government health care insurance unless
No, the government is totally on the side of the profiteers. Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a break here for station identification. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to go back to the phones to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, you were bringing up about Iran and the Straits of Hormuz. I've been through there quite a few times. And most people don't know because you think you see Saudi Arabia and everything's flat and sandy. That coastline of Iran is very rugged and high.
Yes.
I mean, it would be a great piece of military, to put missiles all through there. You wouldn't be able to bomb them from the air or anything. So it's like a strategic, a wonderful military place to put guns and missiles, and you're not going to be able to touch them. I mean, it looked to me like it was 1,000 foot high and nothing but cliffs. So it's very rugged. It's not like you look on the other side, you get to Saudi Arabia or Kuwait. It's nothing but sand. But every bit of Iran coastline that I saw looked like 1,000, 2,000 feet high and rugged. So. To people that haven't been through there, think it's going to be an easy thing. Even with our great Navy, I think it's going to be a disaster for us. I think our Navy will just, if they get in a shooting war in that spot, they're going to have their ass handed to them. Because it wouldn't take that much. Like you said, the shipping lanes are tight.
Yes.
And you can use mines and missiles and just plain old guns. I mean, howitzers up there in those mountains and caves. It would be a pretty easy place tactically to defend and to arm to the teeth. And I can't see, what do you use, napalm or bombs on them in those cliffs and hills? No, So they got to, to tell you the truth, they were very blessed in the geography to have the power over that strait, and be a mistake to play games with the Iranians, if you ask me. I hope we don't.
Well, I hope we don't, but the United States government has become a war machine. We've been watching it now for 18 years, and it just goes from one war to the next, to the next, to the next, and clearly is uninterested in any other agenda. They're not really doing anything about illegal immigration. They're not really doing anything about repairing our manufacturing other than factories that make weapons. The education system is in terrible shape. This country is in serious trouble. And because the last 2 times this country was in serious trouble, a world war got us out. That's what they're trying to create. And I think we're heading for some really, really dark times.
Well, I hope not. I mean, a war will be a nightmare for everybody. Nobody escapes it. I mean, you watch those old shows about what happens during a war. You read the books about the Marines in World War II and what they went through, and
Yep.
It's hard to believe. Anybody that could cheer on a war really should go watch the YouTube videos With the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge and read about or listen to his book about being in the Marines and island hopping in Palau and Okinawa, and it's just amazing. The stuff that he describes is just so real, and it's hard to believe that people could go through that and maintain their sanity. It was incredible what those guys had to go through. The other thing I wanted to comment on was Joe Biden. And, it's typical for a Democrat. He comes out and he announces he's going to run, and it's based on the lie of Charlottesville.
Yes.
They just can't help themselves. It's like the party of liars. And I guess they're sold their soul to the devil to such a degree that they just can't help but lie. I mean, he comes out, he makes a statement based on Charlottesville and the lie that Trump said that everybody was the same or whatever. I mean, it's just another fraud. It just amazes me that they can't not lie to anybody that is not.
That's what works for them. That's what works for them. And what we, the American people, need to be doing is just, keeping a tally. He lied here. He lied here. He lied here. He lied here. I mean, the lesson for our time now, whether it's Obama promising on the campaign trail that he would get our troops back home. Remember when he said you can take that to the bank? Donald Trump saying that he was going to end these foreign interventions and bring our kids home. We get lied to. We really have no clue what the government is about. We're lied to about Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas. They even lie about the laws to just switch them around and make them, ad hoc what we can do today.
Well, we have a new type of lie. I call it the touchy-feely lie. It's the liberal lie that makes you feel better and morally superior. Like Charlottesville, one side's Nazis, the other side are the noble ones. It's like Kavanaugh, one side's the white privileged male rapist, the other's the poor innocent victim, commie college professor. And all these lies are just so easy for members of my own family, particularly the lefty women, to just buy these lies. They're easily disproven. They'll never admit, even if you have pictures of Kavanaugh and whatever, they're never going to admit that they bought into these lies. So it's just kind of sad because they're willfully ignorant. And they're going along with provable lies, and you can't talk them out of it, and it doesn't end well. I mean, it's just
no, it doesn't end well. They don't want to admit that they were wrong. They don't want to admit they were made fools of, and it does take time to change them. And I know that because I have family members who, again, 20 years ago when I was just starting out on this, they knew that what the TV was telling them was the truth. And how dare I come on out and accuse the President of the United States of killing his deputy counsel and making it look like a suicide. But again, these days, most Americans do understand skepticism is necessary, that you've got to really just take whatever corporate media is feeding you with a grain of salt and figure out who's benefiting from this, what do they want to get from me for this, and more importantly, are we being distracted from something else? Because there's a lot of that going on. I mean, they're still going on about Biden on Fox News. I mean, I'm sure there's other things happening in the world.
Well, what's interesting also is that there's so much of their truth is lies. I mean, their lies are, they think are the truth, and the truth is what they think are lies. It's like they call you a kook if you did talk about Vince Foster, which was an obvious murder.
Yes.
They talk, you're a kook about Waco and Oklahoma City and 9/11 and all these things that I could debate about and show information about. I won't run away from an argument about any of those issues. And the lie there is the truth, and you're a nut if you question it. So it really is, the world's so upside down. The culture is. There are pockets of culture like your show and others on the alt-right and stuff.
Yep.
That you get the truth. The truth is out there. It is suppressed, and it doesn't get all the bells and whistles and promotions, but you can find it, but it's a shame because really all mainstream is just such a river of lies. It's hard to imagine what's
and they get paid good money for it. They get paid good money for it. Okay, well, Joe, I'm going to let you go. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network, and we're going to go back to the phones to Dustin in New Jersey. Dustin, aloha. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike, I want to remind Joe, it's not just the left, it's the right also. There's people who actually still believe the Iraq war weapons of mass destruction story because, they just can't accept the fact they've been lied to. So they got to go along with the lie rather than, look at the fact that they've been made a fool. Hey, Mike, by the way, did you know the McCain family is going to vote for Biden? They said that.
No, I didn't know that they said it. I'm not surprised about that. The real surprise so far is that Obama has not offered to endorse him yet, which means Obama may be holding out for Hillary to step in.
Yeah, because, Joe Biden's part of that club with the Hunter Biden in Ukraine with Barista and all that, getting them, isn't it amazing after the coup gets moved right, Hunter Biden gets moved right into there.
Yep.
I mean, it's just such a big scam. And then they loan, the IMF loans the Ukraine money knowing they can't pay it. It's just, and then, what would happen is like they would take Ukraine's assets and just sell them off, right, privately. That's how it works.
Yep. They basically privatize the assets, and eventually, in exchange for using their paper and colored ink, the bankers own the country that used to be yours. We're seeing it here in this country with, the federal control / confiscation of our public lands. And that's because those public lands are now pledged as collateral on massive government borrowing. There really is going to be a huge crash. I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to see it, but there's going to be a huge global crash when all of this comes apart. Anyway, I just got an email, and it's got a different opinion. It says, I can't see Biden doing better against Trump than Mondale did against Reagan. No one cares about ex-vice presidents, even if they pretend they do during primaries for partisan reasons. Am I alone in this perception? Well, I would say there's some validity to it, but some former vice presidents have done very well, like Harry Truman. And as far as Walter Mondale is concerned, he was never that good at connecting with the voters. So I was frankly surprised that he even tried to run.
Mike, what does the attack in Iran have to do with making America great again? Like, if Trump does that, then he lost, then Joe Biden will win. Like, anybody will win then, because the people who voted for Trump, who don't want war, won't vote for him then.
No, that's probably the biggest thing working against Donald Trump is the peace vote. And I think you're right. I think you're right that maybe Tulsi could win. It depends on how strong the anti-war sentiment builds over the next year and a half. And I think. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the Strait of Hormuz. Isn't that less than 30 miles wide? I mean, yeah.
I'm sorry.
The Strait of Hormuz, isn't that like only 30 miles wide?
Yeah, it is, but the actual shipping channel is much narrower than that.
Well, I'm saying that anti-ship missiles can easily hit their targets, though.
Yes.
So I mean, to do that it's insane, because there's not going to be no invasion per se, because there's just no way that with the terrain. It's a variety of terrain in Iran. It'd be a naval type of thing, and that's I just don't see it happen. I mean, this is insane. I mean, and Mike, by the way, I just saw like tonight there's like a lot of Israeli Air Force planes over Lebanon.
Yes.
I don't know if they're ready to do a strike in Syria against the Republican Guard. Because I was reading they're moving some stuff around in Syria also.
Yes.
Like the advisors or whatever. But so I don't know what's going on. But like, yeah, if Trump does this before the next, I mean, he's not going to win. I mean, it's just no way. And I don't. Maybe that he doesn't want to win. You know, because,
Tucker Carlson actually made that observation a while back that, Trump's ego is satisfied. He's been the president, and he doesn't want to just quit and walk away. So he's going to run, a lukewarm campaign and lose the election. George Herbert Walker Bush did that. A lot of commentators at the time said it seemed like George Herbert Walker Bush just wasn't interested in running for a second term. And the reason for that was because the investigation into Iran-Contra and all that cocaine that was coming up from Central America through Arkansas was getting closer and closer to him. So he figured if he stepped out of the spotlight, then maybe the investigations would go away.
And Mike, real quick before I get up, I was watching the Iranian spokesman. He goes, he speaks very good English. He goes, he don't think Trump wants war, but the people like John Bolton around him want it.
Oh, no question.
Trump put those people in.
I think Trump put those people in because those were payback for his political donations. We know that Sheldon Adelson, I think, wanted Bolton there.
But Sheldon Adelson's not like, he doesn't care about making America great again.
No, he just wants to bomb Israel's enemies.
Yeah. All right, Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. Anyway, the waivers for Iranian oil expire on May 2nd. The current endorsed official word from the White House is they will not be renewed. So we'll see what Iran does after that. But that caller was absolutely correct. That is a very formidable coastline. So if the Iranians simply drop a couple of old rusted hulks into that shipping channel, all they got to do is sit up there and prevent U.S. ships from getting in there to haul them away. Former European Union consultant Paulo von Schirach, in an interview with Sputnik, said that U.S. President Trump and Secretary of State Pompeo face an uphill struggle to force other nations to abandon their oil trade with Iran. I would imagine so. These nations are absolutely dependent on that Iranian oil. The U.S. can't replace it. I mean, the U.S. has turned itself into a major oil producer, but it's still a net importer. So Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif told reporters that Iran will continue to sell its oil despite U.S. sanctions and survives Washington's attempt to deal with Tehran through oppression, which is exactly what it is. Getting on back to John Bolton, he's sort of hemming and hawing about an Israeli attack on Lebanon. And there's kind of this weird thing that's going on. Earlier in the month, Donald Trump declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization. Iran House declared all U.S. military forces a terrorist organization. This actually changes the dynamic in that there are already organizations that issue rewards for terrorists. So this may be the beginning of going after each other's donors to try and bankrupt them. Anyway, Lebanon in return is threatening that if Israel attacks them, they will strike the Tel Aviv airport. And apparently, Lebanon's defense minister, Elias Abu Saab, has warned that the Lebanese Air Force will strike Israel's Ben Gurion airport in the event of a military conflict between the two states. Speaking during his tour to the southern part of the country, the minister promised Beirut will react symmetrically to Tel Aviv's military actions. If Israel bombards our airport, we will bombard its airport. If it strikes our oil facilities, we will strike their oil facilities. It is very scary, all this war talk. It really, really is. Donald Trump is still talking about recognizing the West Bank as belonging to Israel. He already did it with Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. And Donald, you don't really have the authority under international law to break pieces off one country to give to another. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We've got a caller waiting on the line, Peter in California. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I'd like to chime in on the kind of the military situation with Iran. And I've looked at that many times. I've seen that coastline. It is formidable. The thing you have to, I think Dustin alluded to it, is the range of some of these anti-ship missiles. Some of them are several hundred miles.
Yes.
And which means that you'd have to clear that. You'd have to clear that coastline for quite a ways in order to shut that strait down. And you could hide a lot of stuff on the bluffs and those mountains, and it is very rugged. But it would require, and I think I've told you this before when I called in about this, is that in my assessment, looking at the Straits of Hormuz, it would require about 3 Army divisions to seal off that whole that peninsula. And you could helicopter over the defenses and all that. You have to get it from the back, but then you'd still have to hold that against the Iranians coming, to get you out. And so then just some stray artillery or howitzer rounds, as somebody else said, lobbed in there, which may or may not be, if they're smart artillery rounds, they'd be very effective. But even if they were just regular dumb artillery, ballistic rounds, it would raise the insurance rates hugely, and not many people with sitting on 1 million barrels of oil on one of those super tankers would probably want to brave that, like a white phosphorus round or something like
yes.
that. But the other thing, Mike, is, and this is the reason why the whole war in Yemen is crucial for Saudi Arabia and Iran and Israel.
Yes.
Because they know that could be shut down. Yemen would allow them to bypass the Straits of Hormuz. They could go in there with an airport and port facilities right away and bypass going through that strait. And so the longer the Houthis hold out and the longer the Saudis bungle, cowardly bungling that they've been doing, I don't believe that they would ever attempt taking on Iran without Yemen being cleared first, so they would have that, so that the oil could keep flowing.
Yeah, so, I think you're right. I'm looking at the...
By the way,
yeah.
We don't have the divisions. I told you it would take 3, and maybe more. It's a pretty big area. What Joe from Tennessee was talking about Peleliu. There was the 1st Marine Division and the Army's 81st of 2 divisions on Peleliu. It was only 5 miles long, relatively compared to Iran. I mean, there were some mountains in the interior, but relatively flat. And that took a month and it absolutely wiped out a division. And the Iranians would fight like the Japanese. They don't give up. They had like human wave attacks against the Iraqis. There's some gutsy guys with some technology as well.
Yes. I was just looking on the map again and looking at what could Oman do if this goes south. What would Yemen likely be doing? And again, the problem here is everybody was getting along just fine. People were buying and selling oil, steel, food all across the globe. Why did the United States feel they needed to come in and just try and take control of it all? Because that's what it's really all about. The United States is desperate to have all global commerce, no matter what the product is, under U.S. control, so they can take a little piece of the action.
I think that's right, Mike, but, I also think that we've been prodded and told that this is the greatest thing to do, and the policymakers that are in place making these decisions are dual loyalty guys, not even dual loyalty. They're loyal to Israel.
Yes.
And Bolton and all these guys, they are neocon, Israel firsters, as is Trump, and we have been involved in taking on their enemies and trashing that whole region from Libya to Syria to Iraq, and now they're trying to trash Iran and Yemen, with millions of refugees that have now destabilized Europe.
Yep. And the United States.
And skyrocketing oil prices, and it's all simply because we are not following our own interests. We're following Israel's interests, and they run us.
Yep.
So that's my opinion. I mean, you're right. It's easy to convince these people to have that we want to control everything, but they're all Israeli firsters. They want to control it to Israel's benefit, not ours.
Yes.
Because we were getting along just fine. Saddam Hussein had to sell his oil to somebody. Who cares? What he did, or it was fine when we were supplying him. And one of the first things that Obama did was stop in Tripoli and pay homage to what's his name, Gaddafi.
Yes.
And then he went out and made his
All right, Peter. Got to put you on hold.
Yeah.
Got to put you on hold. Got to take another break for commercials.
Sure.
We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles, and we're talking about just how out of control the situation is. And unfortunately, I think this illustrates something I've said many times. The curse of political power is that it attracts the very sort of people who shouldn't have it. And I would say at this point that very rarely do you see a national leader who is truly interested in what's best for their nation. And that all rulers tend to be bad. They only get a label good or bad if they win or lose the war. If the Nazis had won World War II, we'd be hearing good things about Adolf Hitler, and Winston Churchill would have been called a war criminal. Anyway, anything else, Peter?
Well, just a couple other things that you on about this Iran thing, and that is, it's a lot easier for Russia and the Chinese. The Chinese have said they would back Iran,
yes,
to supply over land Iran, and give them up-to-date weapons and so on. They've got 70 or 80 million people.
Yes.
They've got their own money and resources. They've got an intelligent, educated workforce and population. You can kiss whatever has happened, whatever we have in Afghanistan, kiss it goodbye. It would be sitting at the end of a long salient. Pakistan wouldn't want to, only air supply, and Pakistan probably wouldn't acquiesce to that any longer. And then we've got we have a base called Arifjan, which is a 15 minutes flight from northern Kuwait, right from
yes.
the Iranian border. They would take that immediately. So it's such a losing proposition, and yet look at the treasure, and anybody with any kind of training, you've hit it, Dustin's hit it, Joe's hit it, everybody's hit it here, can look at that and see how stupid it is, and yet we're doing it anyways against our interests. All they want to do is sell oil, and all we want to do is burn oil. You think we could reach an accommodation on that, except for Israel. So there you go.
Yeah, and it does seem like the entire region is headed for a conflict, and it's about the oil and the oil money. And what nobody really seems to be thinking about is wars burn up a lot of that very same oil that is seen as the prize. Remember when Saddam realized he was losing his war and he just opened up all those wellheads and set them off on fire?
I was there for that. You couldn't even see the sky, Mike.
Yeah.
And the whole Persian Gulf was totally polluted, and it's imagine the pollution
Yes.
with millions of barrels of oil floating around in the Persian Gulf and into the Indian Ocean and everywhere else.
It's probably still floating around there.
Yeah. Oh, it's as dirty as it's dirtier than the Gulf with the Corexit in it.
Yes.
But we would have to nuke our way in there. And I'm looking at the map now, and I was doing it before without really looking at it. There's an enormous coastline that would need to be secured, and it would take more than 3 divisions to do that. So, anyways, it's such a loser. Yet here we are. That's what we're threatening.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map myself too, and just figuring out what is likely to happen. Okay, so there we are.
Like a couple of years ago, just before I get off, there was some little blurb somewhere that there's an Omani island, an island off the coast of Oman.
Yes.
That has been relatively just taken over, at least had been, by the U.S. for military basing.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know about that, but it is there.
Yeah, that's. I think that's over in the Gulf of Aden. And
yes.
Okay.
Gulf of Oman. Yeah.
Oh, the Gulf of Oman. Okay. Yeah, I heard about that too. And of course, one of the problems with Google Earth is that the pictures are not brand new. The pictures are, in many cases, years old, and as a result, you can't really learn anything contemporary or current. So, let's see.
Mike, didn't I read, or didn't you say something that they're making moves to throw us out of Diego Garcia?
There's been talk about it. I mean, the people who were moved out of Diego Garcia, they want it back. Anyway, I can't find the island right off. Well, I know there's this one island down here. Yeah, this is the one. But it's in the Gulf of Aden. It's not in the Gulf of Oman.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. Listen, I got to let you go. We got calls are piling up, and
thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to John in Canada. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? John, are you there? Okay, then let's switch over to Don in Iowa. Aloha, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Okay, I don't seem to be hearing phone calls. Did both of those callers drop, or are we having technical issues? Okay, that's a drop. Okay, we have Don on the line. Don in Iowa, are you there? I guess not. Okay, well, John and Don, if you'd like to, please call back in, and we'll get the gremlins out of the phone system. Getting on back to international affairs here, Israel is now accusing Switzerland of funding legal procedures against it. Now, what this has to do is that Israel brought a lot of pressure to bear over at the United Nations for the UN to cut off funding for Israeli and Palestinian non-governmental organizations. And apparently, people in Europe have stepped in to fill the gap. And Israel's very unhappy about that. How dare you fund these NGOs? that refuse to see things our way. Okay, we got a caller on the line. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Tom in Florida, are you there? I'm not hearing Tom in Florida.
Can you hear me, Michael?
I hear you now.
Hear me now?
I hear you now.
Yes, Michael. Good day to you. Yes, Michael, I want to clear something up from last week. I had a guy calling after me because I had brought something up about Kate Smith, and he was berating me, saying, "I know you learn to know my history." I know quite well about my history, about the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the World War I, Korean War, World War II, any war you want to talk about. I was an A1A student in that, and conduct and learning of my history. Okay.
Okay.
So I was trying to tell that guy is, hey, listen, I love everybody, man. I love everybody. But I'll tell you right now, I was just bringing out the fact that you agreed with me that would not allow me to happen if it was the other way around, Michael. And you agreed with me on that. So he was berating me about that. I don't know my history. I seen the movie The Patriot, Mel Gibson. Okay, that's all I gotta say.
That's not exactly an historical documentary.
Well, I understand that, Michael, but I know that Afro Americans fought in the Revolutionary War. That's basically they were there in the beginning.
Yes.
I know all that. I know all about the Civil War. They fought in the Civil War. I know all about that. I know they fought in World War I. They fought in World War II, Korea. I basically know all that. Okay.
Yes.
Now, that's why I just want to get that off my chest. What I really called you about now is this, though. Today they arrested yesterday they arrested a mayor in Texas for voter fraud. Well, Michael, all of a sudden that's news. This has been going on for years with this voter fraud for all these illegals coming here, voting in all these elections. And, they say, oh, it doesn't matter. It ain't that big a deal. If it's one illegal voting, it's one too many because that could swing an election.
Yes.
In a mayor's race or governor's race or the presidential race. It only takes one vote for a man to become a president over another guy in this country. One voter.
Yep.
One vote could turn the election from Democrat to Republican, Republican to Democrat. So my point is, this is not a news media is catching up with this. Breitbart, Drudge, even Fox was talking about it a little bit now. I mean, you never hear too much communist news like the CNN will never talk about that too much. They're too worried about Joe Biden. They're slobbering all over themselves. Oh, Joe Biden.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
He's a hero. I mean, hear this guy, how much money he stole from Russia. All the crap that Biden's pulled over his career. And what was the lady with the Justice, Clarence Thomas, and the woman, I can't think of her name right now.
Oh, there was
Anita Hill.
Yes, that was it.
Anita Hill. So, yeah, the media, I mean, you used to see I was surfing the net. You used to see these news channels slobber on themselves. It's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. And they want a guy like Biden in there. What did Biden do for the economy for 8 years in Obama? They put the economy in the tank. It was a disaster. 2% growth if you're lucky. 1.6 average. No, that ain't growing economy. Oh, Obama said we'll never be oil independent. Well, we are oil independent now. He kept saying, "Oh, we'll never bring manufacturing back to the United States." And they want this guy Biden or a guy who represented Obama in the White House? Are you kidding me? Look what did Biden do for the economy for anybody? What was it? 50-some million people on food stamps? Unbelievable. And here Trump's trying to stop the immigration. Nobody else has talked in 50 years about immigration, 60 years. And here's somebody finally saying, "Hey, enough of this insanity." And who's immigration hurting more than anybody in this country, Michael? What group of people?
The taxpayers, the ordinary people, the ordinary citizen.
Okay, and ethnically, who's really hurting?
I'm probably going to say, the Caucasian population.
Okay, I'll agree with you on that. Fine, I agree with you on that. That's who's hurting. Because you're absolutely right. Because it's hurt everybody, but here in South Florida or anywhere, you go to West Palm Beach, you go and eat. I mean, it's unbelievable how much immigration is coming in here. It ain't just from Central America either, Michael. It's from South America. You got a lot of people from South America coming here in droves.
Yes.
And they're driving the wages down. It's unbelievable. Matter of fact, I saw some on the news just a couple hours ago about the measles outbreak. It's almost unprecedented now.
Yes.
Measles is all over the place now. it's going to be a pandemic probably. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But
Well, I don't know how much of a pandemic it's going to be. I mean, the other day we had this scandal come out where both NBC and CNN were caught faking pictures of children with measles. Apparently, they couldn't find any, despite a Google search. So they just took pictures of these cute, adorable children, and they photoshopped in the measles pustules.
no, I believe that. I mean, that one surprised me one bit. And one more thing, Michael. What happened in Sri Lanka was horrific. I don't know if you saw the videos of these guys, young men walking around with these backpacks.
Yes.
I don't see if you wanted to see one video where the guy's walking and he taps a little girl in the head and the father's walking across the street or whatever, and then all of a sudden he goes into church and blows it up. I mean, Michael, the people who are coming to this country definitely have to be vetted better.
Yes.
I don't know what's going to happen here.
I would definitely agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's getting worse by the. It seems like it's getting worse.
Yeah, it is getting worse. It is getting worse. Okay, Tom, I got to let you go. We've got lines full of callers here. So thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Don in Iowa. Aloha, Don. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mike.
Okay, good. All right. Well, we've got ourselves a phone connection. What's on your mind today?
Well, you're talking about Biden started off about talking about Charlottesville. And looking back on Charlottesville, that was kind of a pivotal moment. They tried, and Trump did say that some of the people there were nice, just nice people.
Yes.
But we never did find out because the mainstream media, who should have done their job, they did not do their job. They never did go. I kept on waiting to see, well, who were these people? Because there was like, if they would have broke it down, well, 25% were just interested in sculpture, and they didn't hate to see a statue get torn down. And maybe 25% were Civil War buffs. Maybe 25% were some kind of a right organization. Although I don't think any of those people there called themselves Nazis, did they?
To the best of my knowledge, no. That's a label that gets flung around by political operatives.
People throw this word around Nazi, and hardly anybody anymore. The American Nazi Party is very, very small. There are people who believe in, I don't know, they have some kind of, they believe in white separatism or whatever, but I don't know who all was there. And that thing was kind of a psyop from the beginning. The mainstream media was in on there trying to.
It felt like it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, some of those people there who acted like they were alt right or whatever. I think they might have been fake. And I myself got kicked off of a message board after that.
Yes.
Because I just commented, well, you don't know who these people were. I mean, some of them were nice. People who just like that statue probably. They've seen that statue all their life. We don't know. Nobody's really figured out exactly who all those people were and investigated it. And I got kicked off of a message board. And nowadays, lately I've been also getting shadow banned once in a while. But I've been, even before there was an internet, I got ostracized once in a while. I never had been about polite chit chat. I say what's on my mind, and that's it. And it doesn't bother me a bit. And if they kicked me off of that one message board, and I was the only one on that message board that predicted right up to the end. I predicted that Trump was going to win. So, if you want to look at it that way, I was the only one that was right about it. And
Okay, Don.
I
got to let you go. Got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go right back to the phones here to John in Canada. John, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Sorry, I got cut off before. I wanted to continue on. You're two of my favorite callers is Dustin and the other guy from Los Angeles. But further to what they were saying, the Chinese have built a base right in that area, right on the Gulf of Aden.
Yes.
And it's their only base in the world, or it's their first base overseas, and it was almost $600 million right on the Gulf of Aden, right in that in the other choke point, opposite the Hormuz Straits. It's the Gulf of hang on a sec. It's the Bab el Mandeb Strait. Have you heard of that one?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So they're all the big players are trying to control what comes in and goes out of the Gulf and around into the Suez Canal. And I just wanted to add to that. That's basically all I wanted to do.
Okay, well, thank you for the updated information here. And yeah, don't you get tired of learning your geography through war?
Yeah, it's predictable, and I think from an outsider from the US, the way the US tries to control countries and regions, tens of thousands of kilometers and miles away from where they actually are, is a problem. And I visit the US regularly, and there's more than enough money to be spent, like in places like Seattle, just down the road from me.
Yep.
And it's a shame, But anyway, Mike, have a good show. I just thought I'd chip that one in, and have a good day. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dan in Illinois. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Got me?
I hear you now, yes.
Okay, I just heard a big noise. I heard on True News this morning with Rick Wiles that China has a port of call in Sri Lanka now due to some tricky money lending that Sri Lanka couldn't pay back.
Yeah.
They signed a 99-year deal. So that makes Diego Garcia very important to us and the British, and at least, we got a little toe in there compared to their big toe.
Yes.
So that's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about the Indian Ocean.
Well, everybody's moving their assets into position and jockeying for the best place that they can be. And when everybody decides they've done as much as they can in terms of preparation, some idiot will hit the button and get this thing really going. But it's all about projecting power. It's about controlling sea lanes of communication. And I remember when I was a kid hearing about the horrors of World War II from my family who'd fought in it. I remember hoping I was never going to live long enough to see it, but it looks like I will. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We got to take a break for station identification. We've got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We have 2 callers waiting on the line. Thomas in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I hope that you and Claire are doing well. And my topic is religion. And I think it's interesting that you have a wife that is religious and then you're not. And this relates to myself. I fluctuate in my belief in God. Sometimes I believe in God, and then sometimes I don't. And it seems as though every time I study the Bible more, then I become more of a heretic. I don't believe it then. I think there's a God. I don't know, but whatever. I heard the whole thing of the Old Testament about like how you had to slaughter lambs for God to give you forgiveness. I think that's kind of crazy. And then the whole thing is, if God is Almighty, why? Maybe it's true. I don't know, but why would He sacrifice His Son? Can't He just like wave a magic wand or something like that, and everything would be good? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was raised religious. I was raised congregational. I sang in the church choir in that little town in New England I grew up in. and got the little pin, with all the years I was there. And the last year I was there, they gave me my own copy of the Bible. And that was probably their big mistake, because I actually read it over the summer. And yeah, it didn't make sense to me either. So when Sunday school started back up again.
Oh, well, you and I are similar. When I went to confirmation class, everyone else got tested, but not me, because I passed with flying colors because I knew it. I mean, more than other people. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm a Bible scholar or anything like that, but that's my whole thing. Is I could probably become a devout Christian if I just didn't read the Bible. But actually, I do read it, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, part of the problem, of course, is the Council of Nicaea, where they took what had really happened with Joshua, which was his real name, and he basically made a play for the throne of Judea, and that's what he was crucified for. But he'd had all these followers that he'd been preaching to, and the Romans decided they were basically going to take advantage of that and use it for control. And then during the Council of Nicaea, they basically rewrote the legend. The Jews got the blame for the crucifixion, because you don't sell a religion to the Roman people by telling them the Roman government had committed deicide. And, they threw out a lot of the Gospels that didn't conform to the new Orthodox telling. It's like a 2,000-year-old game of gossip, and it really doesn't, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. Anyway, Thomas, I'm going to let you go. We're getting a little short on time, and I want to switch over to this next caller. Eric in Tennessee. Aloha, Eric. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Hello. Okay, aloha to you. And I wanted to bring up I brought it up before, the movie Unplanned. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it or not.
No, I have not.
I got to watch it online. Okay, I got to watch it online, but when it comes out in the theater near me, I'm going to go pay him just to say I paid him. But my thoughts on that was the medical industrial complex needs full-term babies, and this is what New York State and Virginia passed the laws about with late-term abortion.
Yes.
And I believe they need the full babies to be able to harvest their organs worldwide for worldwide commerce. And I've heard that they're worth $1 million body for the organs. I find that disgusting.
Well, it's a complex argument, and as we enter the age of 3D printing with biological materials, I am thinking that maybe harvesting late-term babies will become obsolete.
I hope you're right on that. That would be a wonderful thing. They can just make them. Hey, by the way, I heard you're heading back to the mainland at some point. I'm in Northeast Tennessee, which is not too far from Indiana. I heard that's where you want to land.
Yes.
But if you and Claire need a place to stay for up to a year, I got 5 bedrooms in the house, and I'm the only one here. So I'd be more than happy to put you up for a while you get your feet
That
up
would be
here.
very generous, because it would allow us to, the main reason we're doing this move, we want to be close to family. We want to avoid war on this island. But more importantly is I need to get some bills paid that have been hanging over us for a very, very long time. And nobody in independent media is getting rich. And so, we need to cut our costs.
Well, I carry high-speed internet in my house, and I can give you a whole room to set up a studio if you want to broadcast from there. And it's a huge room. I mean, it's like 1,200 square feet.
Boy, that is most generous of you. That is very, very generous of you.
But I offer that to you because I plan to start doing some traveling in the near future. I'm semi-retired now, and Well, I got this house, and eventually I'm going to sell, but that's no hurry on selling it. If you know what I mean?
Okay, I hear what you're saying. We'd function as house sitters, which was an idea I hadn't really thought about before. I mean, this is going to be a very tight move for us. You know, we're probably going to we're going to have to sell pretty much everything that we've got. And you know, we've seen other people who get sick and tired of the island and they leave, and out in front of their home on the sidewalk is just everything they couldn't take along with them, and we call them, you know, bailout piles. So
yeah. Well, here I have a fully furnished home with stuff I don't need and don't want, for the most part.
Yep.
You may be able to make use of a lot of it. I don't know. But,
I can make use of a lot of stuff here. You know, but again, would you do me a favor, Eric? Would you leave your email address with our board op so that I'm starting to build a resource list of people that we may be looking at.
You know, I'm musically inclined, Michael. I used to play violin and piano when I was younger.
Okay.
And Clara might be able to help me with some of my older instruments. I got my dad's old violin and viola that need some work on them, but she might be able to help track you down the people to work on them in this area.
Well, that would be more my department. I'm the roadie. Claire doesn't play stringed instruments. I actually did play violin very briefly in college, but I do know what makes them tick. Anyway, Eric, thank you very much for the most generous offer. And
yeah, I'll get.
Okay, so Sam, if you could pick up the phone. Sam, pick up the phone and get that for me. All right, so we're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And getting on back to Israel, apparently the Israel army is going to confiscate more Palestinian land for a new settlement bypass road. And what's going on? There's this settlement watchdog NGO Peace Now. And what they've noticed is the illegal settlements don't just have roads that go back down into Israel. They're starting to build roads that travel between each other, which of course solidifies their visible presence on the land and of course justifies the seizing of more Palestinian land. All right. Pew Research Center just ran a poll and discovered that the American people view the people of Israel positively, but the government negative. 64% of Americans say they have a favorable opinion of the Israeli people. Only 41% have a favorable view of the Israeli government. Okay. Russia has announced they're going to start sending their S-400 missile defense shipments to Turkey this coming July. So that is definitely on. And Turkey may be looking at buying warplanes from China and Russia rather than the F-35. Apparently, Saudi Arabia carried out a mass execution, 37 men on Tuesday, all for crimes related to terrorism. And then they crucified 2 of the bodies as a warning to others. And the United Nations Human Rights Chief is saying, you know, that this is shocking. It's aberrant. And everybody's out there screaming about it. Okay, I got to make a note here someplace. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So everybody's condemning Saudi Arabia. Yeah, it can be very, very brutal, but there's a couple of things to remember. It is their country, and that if done correctly, beheading is actually quite painless. I know it looks horrible. A lot of people, they look at the guillotine and the French Revolution and say, what a horrible, horrible thing, and don't understand it was designed to be the most humane and painless way of executing people. Because, you know, that blade was unstoppable, and the impact of the weight on the back of the head knocked you unconscious immediately. All right, so let's talk about Korea. Kim Jong-un met with the Russian president earlier today, and they're not talking about what they discussed with any kind of clarity or detail, but analysts are saying that Putin is trying to reboot the denuclearization talks with the United States. The meeting took place in Vladivostok, 129 kilometers from the border Russia shares with North Korea. So Putin's putting in the airtime, and I understand he's on his way to Beijing next. It is Russia's shortest international border, only 17 kilometers along the Tumen River. And since the end of the Soviet Union, North Korea has figured very little in Moscow's geopolitical calculus as Russia sided with the West on banking U.S. sanctions against Pyongyang. Maybe that might change, because it appears that Pyongyang and Moscow are drawing closer again. Now, Putin came on out from the meeting and said that Kim Jong-un is ready to denuclearize with conditions. And basically the conditions involve something you talked about before: ironclad security guarantees. And because he doesn't trust the United States of America, Kim Jong-un is saying he wants security guarantees underwritten by multiple countries. He's sort of bringing back the six-nation talks Russia participated in until their collapse in 2009. So that's how the nuclear weapons would get removed. You're going to have a whole bunch of countries come on in and say, we will stand with you if the U.S. tries to invade. That's going to be a tough sell. But apparently Putin is reaching out to Trump and says he has additional details to share. I'm sure some of those details are going to be, don't make the bargaining all one-sided. Just, you know, tit for tat. They do, you do. They do, you do. Putin also came out with a statement that said, unfortunately, some Western countries voice claims for the exclusive global leadership. Gee, I wonder who he's talking about. They boldly violate the norms and principles of international law and resort to blackmailing, imposing sanctions, and pressure to try to impose their values and vague ideals on whole countries and peoples. We absolutely do not agree with such approaches. He said this in an interview with the Chinese Renmin Ribao, the People's Daily newspaper, published ahead of his visit to Beijing later this week. And in the interview to the People's Daily, Putin argued that bilateral Russia-China relations are a stabilizing factor in global affairs. And yeah, they are. Because Russia-China together are formidable, and the United States is not going to be able to deal with them. Okay, the other day, we reported that Kim Jong-un's right-hand man had been fired for the failed nuclear arms summit, and now apparently, according to this story that we are seeing in the Daily Mail in Great Britain, 4 foreign ministry officials have been executed by North Korea. And apparently they were executed because they were caught selling information to the United States ahead of Kim Jong-un's failed summit. That's tacky. Apparently, one of the four was reportedly a diplomat from North Korea's embassy in Hanoi. So Kim Jong-un did blame the failure of the summit on information leaked to the U.S. before the meeting at the Metropole Hotel in Hanoi. So, yep, that's what did it. Okay. Story that's coming on out from Journal Neo saying that Washington is not happy about the new China focus on Central America. So the United States is now going into this is all our turf mode. And I think one of the reasons they're concerned is China has invested a huge amount of money in the new Panama Canal, oil exploration in Cuba, various other infrastructure projects, shipyards, harbors, things like that. The United States has been wasting all of its money trying to bring Venezuela down without much success. So China's major state-owned oil company, CNPC, through its subsidiary Great Wall Drilling, has begun exploring for oil off Cuba's coast in a joint venture with state-owned oil firm Cuba Petroleum Company. So Great Wall has been engaged in oil exploration in Cuba since 2005, but this is the most promising result to date. So Washington is out there saying, well, no, you got to go home. This is ours. Okay, Bannon and Bass, China is the most significant existential threat the U.S. has ever faced. No, it's an economic threat. It's not an existential threat. But apparently, Apparently, former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon appeared alongside hedge fund manager Kyle Bass, Wall Street's most visible China bear, to try and explain why Washington needs to stick to its guns and make sure that Beijing is held to account for decades of trade abuses. Okay, translation: the tariffs and sanctions will continue. Aloha, America. Welcome back. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about relations with China. So this Kyle Bass, who's a hedge fund manager, just sent out his first investor letter in 3 years, warning about a coming blow-up in Hong Kong's balance of payments. And he made an interesting observation. Kyle is saying that the immense pressure for Trump to strike a deal with China isn't coming from voters. It's coming from Wall Street and corporate America, who have abetted Beijing in its efforts to maintain the status quo on trade, selling out their country in the process. And it makes a lot of sense. With China selling things at a lower price, they make more money. So I think all of these corporations, Wall Street, they're looking at Donald Trump wanting to balance out the trade with China, and they see a lot of red ink at the end of it. A former U.S. diplomat pled guilty Wednesday to lying to investigators about money she received from Chinese intelligence agents in exchange for U.S. documents. And apparently Candace Marie Claiborne, 63 years old, was a Department of State office management specialist based in Beijing and Shanghai, who became involved beginning in 2007 with two men the Justice Department said she knew were agents of China's Ministry of State Security. And they apparently gave her tens of thousands of dollars in cash and gifts in exchange for documents and information on the State Department activities. Now, the interesting thing is, Claiborne was arrested 2 years ago following the investigation. She has not been charged with espionage. Just apparently accepting the bribe. She's been charged with lying to investigators. She's got to be breathing a sigh of relief here. Over at the Organization of American States, they have allowed the ambassador of Venezuela's self-declared president to participate in his first meeting. And this could signal an attempt to take over the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C. Now, there are activists who are defending it, and there's a group initiated by Code Pink and Popular Resistance. All the activists opposed to the prospect of the Venezuelan opposition taking over the embassy have been living inside the building for the last 2 weeks, working side by side with the skeletal Venezuelan diplomatic staff that have been ordered by the State Department to leave by, well, actually yesterday. So, over in Germany, they had a little bit of noise in the city of Regensburg. Workers who are doing some construction uncovered a World War II bomb, 550 pounds, 250 kilogram, and they decided the bomb could not be moved and it could not be diffused. Apparently, it was just really corroded solid. So they decided to just get rid of it in a controlled demolition. And apparently that bomb was a lot more powerful than they were expecting because nearby buildings were damaged in the blast, their windows shattering. They literally evacuated 4,500 people from a 1-mile radius. And it does happen. There are still unexploded World War II munitions, probably World War I munitions, all over the European landscape. So, hey, let's get them some company and have some unexploded World War III munitions. Next month on Atlantic Magazine, the cover story is basically an elegy for the American century. And I understand what they're saying. Back in the 1990s, American influence seemed poised to reach new heights. Today, we're seeing the world turn away. They don't see the United States as a moral leader. They don't see the United States government as having a mandate to run the world. They don't even see it as truthful. They can't do business. This country is self-destructing, and it's because of the unique crop of politicians that we have in Washington, D.C. It's a criminal government. Another article, this is from countermarkets.com. A horrible future awaits for anyone who depends on government. It says lice, cockroaches, and root canals all have better approval ratings than Congress. Congress controls government spending, and 9 out of every 10 people say the government doesn't spend tax dollars wisely. 57% say tax rates are too high. Well, right on both counts. I guess when you've got that many trillions of dollars and access to the printing presses anyway, there's a strong temptation to be irresponsible and reckless. All right. Reuters had a report that has exposed a massive black market trade in gold in Africa. All right, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and we're basically talking about the story from Reuters where there is this immense black market trade in gold that is being smuggled out of Africa and through the United Arab Emirates by crime syndicates, and the gold is being taken and sold in Europe. And so the investigation found the Middle East is the illicit gold gateway to markets in Europe, the United States, and beyond. And of course, the issue here, of course, is that gold is pouring out of countries like Ghana, Ivory Coast, Tanzania, Nigeria, war-torn Libya, and Sudan, with no official oversight by the states in which the gold is mined. So they're not getting a portion of what is essentially their property, nor are any taxes being paid on the business. So it's a criminal enterprise. Okay, Venezuela has sold another $400 million worth of their gold bullion. And it's kind of interesting. The worst performing metal this week was gold, down 1.13%. This is its lowest since January. That happened on Tuesday morning, just as the market opened, after someone dumped 11,000 gold futures contracts worth around $1.5 billion into the market. Traders were using the word fiduciary, saying who recklessly dumps so many contracts unless their motive is to drive the price down. And we know these prices are being manipulated. Tesla did not have a good quarter. And their earnings were reported down. And Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives called Tesla's quarter one of the top debacles he's ever seen in 20 years of covering tech stocks on the street. He slashed his price target for a share of Tesla stock to $275, down from $365, and changed his rating from a buy to a hold. So Tesla stock is very much in trouble. Tesla's already out there talking about, needing to raise some more money. Apparently, one of the things that has shaken these experts is Tesla's new CFO is not considered to be experienced. So Elon Musk is out there talking about having to raise more capital to get the car going. I don't know. I wonder if the Tesla someday will be a collectible like the Tucker Torpedo or the DeLorean. Cars that were way ahead of their time, just couldn't find the market. According to the Congressional Budget Office, 1.4 million Americans have lost their health insurance since 2016, and it's all the fault of Obamacare. Told you it was a bad idea. We're continuing to get reports out of San Francisco about conditions there. They're saying there's an estimated homeless population of 7,500 people. And as a result, even the affluent sections of the city have become dangerous with open-air drug use, tens of thousands of discarded needles, and of course, human poo in the street. Now, San Francisco runs a program where you can take your old needles in, turn them in for destruction, get a new clean needle. But apparently the homeless druggies don't bother with that. They just drop the needles where they use them and then go get a new free needle. So it's being described as at the boiling point between the affluent and the homeless. Now, 7,500 homeless people. It's almost an army, isn't it? Down in Florida, a little bit of good news there. The Florida House of Representatives voted yesterday to ban sanctuary cities from the state. The bill passed at 69 to 47, and it would mandate local law enforcement coordinate with federal authorities in identifying the illegal immigrants. Now, there are actually no sanctuary cities in the Sunshine State, but this bill would ban the future formation of any. So Florida's trying to do something about their illegal immigrant problem. And apparently Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis has signaled support for such legislation. And there is a similar bill in the state Senate that is expected to pass 23 to 17. Needless to say, the voting is along party lines. This one's a very tragic and sad story. It's from Fox 13 Memphis. Apparently, there was this man who literally beat a 4-month-old baby to death. He was in the United States illegally. He had previously been deported 5 times. So, according to this top border agent, this is coming from station gossip, only 6% of illegal aliens are even trying to claim asylum. They just walk on through and keep going. Another study is out there saying that nearly 100,000 unauthorized immigrants graduate from U.S. high schools every single year, mostly concentrated in California, Texas, and Florida. It's just a huge, huge cost. Alrighty. Our government really has gone insane. It really has. The Department of Homeland Security is releasing 7,000 illegal aliens into the U.S. Every 5 days. Every 1 day, it's 1.4 thousand. And it's simply because it's catch and release. They give them a work card. They let them go. They don't have any place to keep them. And now, of course, they're busing the border crossers into nearby border cities and dropping them off with the promise they'll show up for their immigration and asylum hearings, sometimes years later. And the overwhelming majority of border crossers and illegal aliens are never deported from the country once they're released into the United States. Over in Great Britain, apparently there are now an average of 2 killings a day on the British streets as the number of homicides soars to the highest level for 10 years. What's complicating it is fewer criminals are being caught. Now, I don't know if that's because the police are being reallocated to other tasks. What's really frustrating is these are places I've been to. I've been to London. I've been to San Francisco. And it almost makes me sick hearing what they've degenerated to. Now, this is an interesting little story, and may be true, may not be true. This is coming from the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the National Security Agency has informed the White House that it no longer sees its phone surveillance program as worth the effort it requires. Supposedly, the NSA is making the recommendation ahead of a December deadline to either abandon the program or renew the legislation that makes it legal. Apparently, they're coming up on a deadline. So, the NSA has recommended the White House abandon the program that collects metadata about U.S. phone calls and text messages, saying the logistical and legal burdens of keeping it outweigh its intelligence benefits. They're saying it's become limited value to national security. It's become a logistical nightmare. Well, this could just be the NSA getting everybody to try and relax again and not be so concerned about privacy. It could also very easily be true, because when the NSA set this all up, I made the observation that adding data to a database is linearly additive, but the correlation of that data one to the other was an unlimited expansion, and there would be a point at which there simply wasn't enough computer power to make sense out of all of that information. And I think that may be the case here. So what are they going to do with that gigantic data center? They're probably going to come up with something else, something that does record the content of the phone calls, text messages here. Alrighty. The TV show Empire has been renewed for another season. Unfortunately, the creator of the program, Lee Daniels, is saying that Jussie Smollett is probably not going to return to the show due to his lawsuit with the city of Chicago. And boy, Jussie just keeps going from bad to worse. But the Empire creator was on the morning show on Good Day New York to promote a new play he's producing, Ain't No More, when he was asked about Smollett. He says, it's just too painful to talk about. Anyway, we have ourselves another hate crime hoax. This happened at a Corydon Avenue cafe up in Winnipeg, When it originally happened, it was reported as one of Winnipeg's worst ever anti-Semitic hate crimes. But the police are now saying it was staged. 3 owners of the Burmax Cafe were arrested Wednesday and charged with public mischief, which involves intent to mislead and causing an officer to investigate an incident based on false information. The cafe was allegedly robbed, the interior trashed, and the walls spray painted with anti-Semitic graffiti back on April 18th. The police now say this was all staged by the owners. So, misleading information and public mischief. Why is a fake hate crime not prosecuted as a hate crime? I think it ought to be. It's still, playing to the emotions of the people. Certainly be a lot fewer of them. I was going to do this thing about Kate Smith, but this whole cultural erasure thing. Kate Smith was an American icon, and there is an article at whatreallyhappened.com that talks about all the things that she did in support of the black community. All the time she played at the Apollo Theater in New York, scholarship programs, foundations. And that one song that she sang was, back in the 1930s, a popular song, and even black entertainers sang it. Over in Sri Lanka, they're still investigating the Easter Sunday bombings, and they've determined 2 of the 8 suicide bombers who carried out the attack were the sons of one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country. This is a spice trader whose family lived in what the New York Times described as a beautiful white villa just outside of the capital, Colombo. The spice trader, Mohammed Yusuf Ibrahim, built his fortune on black pepper, white pepper, nutmeg, cloves, and vanilla. He was even celebrated by Sri Lanka's former president for his outstanding service to the nation. But for some reason, 2 of his sons joined that jihadi group, pledged their allegiance to ISIS, and bombed those churches. Apparently, one of the other bombers' wives blew herself up when the police came to investigate, and she was pregnant at the time. Just insanity. Just insanity. So getting back on over to Notre Dame, the fingers are pointing all over the place. And right now it seems to be coming back on down to that somebody seriously misjudged how flammable 800-year-old oak was going to be. Because we know they had a new fire suppression system back in 2010. The entire cathedral had been rewired. Now the good news is that while the roof and the spire were devastated, most of the historic treasures were gotten out. Some of the damage is, of course, water damage, because they basically poured water into the blaze. It took about 12 hours to extinguish. It's a shame on that one here. Another little article on Notre Dame. This is from Zero Hedge. The burning of Notre Dame and the destruction of Christian Europe. And the article calls attention to the fact that French authorities rushed to say the fire was an accident. Arson has been ruled out. And it sounds like all the official statements made by the French government after attacks in France during the last decade, because attacks against churches in France and Europe have been multiplying. More than 800 churches were attacked in France during 2018 alone. Now, the churches are empty. The number of priests is decreasing, and the priests that are active in France are either very old or come from Africa and Latin America. The dominant religion in France is now Islam. And every year, churches are being demolished to make way for parking lots, shopping centers, or mosques. By the way, as long as we're on the subject of religion, apparently the Church of Satan qualified for a tax-exempt status with the IRS. Alrighty. There is a textbook, a high school textbook, being put out by Pearson Education. Now, if you remember Pearson Education, they're the people who made a ton of money off of Common Core. They wrote and sold those books that seriously distorted history and science. So this new textbook is titled By the People, A History of the United States. And the book obviously is going to be in classrooms in all the liberal states. It slanders Trump and anyone that supports him. And if that were not enough, it pits police officers against black people. So the final section of the book is titled The Angry Election of 2016, very critical of the president. All right, there's the music. We're going to do a commercial break, and we're going to be back with the last segment of our show today. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And boy, I have to tell you, I'm very, very tired. I did not get a lot of sleep last night because my leg was throbbing here. But we made it. We got all the way through. Out at UCLA, they are having a pole dancing class for students. And it's entitled Sexploration Pole Class. And it's hosted by the UCLA Sexual Health Coalition and UCLA Housing, and advertised itself as teaching the basic moves needed to become a magnificent pole dancer. So, yeah, and how much student loans did these girls have to take out for that? Supposedly, it's a very, very popular class. Out in, again, California, the California State Senate has voted to ban schools and principals from suspending students for willful defiance of teachers, staff, and administrators. The Senate approved the bill by a vote of 30-8. It moves to the Assembly next. A similar bill was vetoed by Governor Jerry Brown last legislative session. Look, you got to have some manner of discipline to keep order in the classroom. Apparently over in Houston, there is this high school, James Madison High School, and their principal, Carlotta Outley Brown, has instituted a new dress code. Not for the students, for the parents. And apparently a local parent went to the school, was trying to enroll her daughter in classes. She was not allowed into the building. The principal said the clothing is not appropriate to a school. Now, I don't have a picture, so I don't know, if she was standing there in a bikini or something. But again, it shows that modern education seems to have decided it can exert much more influence over the student outside of the classroom. And the more they do that, of course, the poorer the quality of the education is. As you probably heard over the weekend, the Dragon X spaceship exploded on tape. Well, actually, it was a static test on the stand. SpaceX is calling it an anomaly. NASA tends to do that as well, but you look at the video, it blew up. And apparently it was a malfunction of some of what are called these Draco engines, which are used for in-space maneuvering. They have the 12 smaller ones and then these larger ones, the 8 Super Dracos, and firing the 8 Super Dracos is apparently what blew the ship up. Now, over in China, a group of university students successfully launched and landed a hypersonic rocket that is capable of traveling at faster than 5 times the speed of sound. That is very, very hip. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get some music work done. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please share what you learn here with everybody that you know. Donate to RBN. Donate to What Really Happened. And we'll see you tomorrow with the lovely Lady Claire. Aloha, America.